What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I want to break down what's going on with the overall market, what you should be watching for as time progresses. I'm also going to break down some very important levels on Tesla, SPY, NVIDIA, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to talk about the earnings that just came out and when Jerome Powell is going to be giving another speech for tomorrow, as he has a longer speech that's coming out, and this is going to affect the markets in my opinion. But before I break anything down all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am personally not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you're guaranteed up to 5 free stocks. This offer ends in just 7 days, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, let's break down what's going on with the market. So earlier today, I released a video and I said that the market's going to likely see some downside very soon, and I still hold that claim. However, I'm not 100% sure about where the top is going to be during this run because I believe the market's due for a pullback and it's going to be coming very soon. I also believe that whether the market has formed the top or not is going to be determined. And nonetheless, there's going to be some downside coming as we have this unfilled gap on SPY that's likely going to fill soon. And the market's in the topping process based off some signals. So I'm going to be breaking down these signals over the next couple of minutes. I'm going to be talking about Jerome Powell as well. But first, let's talk about the market, what's happening for the economic calendar. So the first thing to remember is an hour before the market opens at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have initial jobless claims coming out. We want this to be between 218 to 220,000 or very close to that range. That's going to be an important piece of data. Then we have a couple of Fed speakers as time goes on, some bill auction data coming out. And then finally, as time goes on, we have the big guy, Jerome Powell, giving his speech at 2 p.m. And this time he's going to be talking about the economy. He's going to be talking about the Fed's monetary policy, how inflation is looking, and he's going to be saying some very important things. So this time it's going to be a big speech from Powell. This is officially going to cause more volatility. Today, his speech caused a little bit of volatility. The market kind of like popped, then dropped significantly, then came right back up. It was pretty crazy. Tomorrow is likely going to be crazier once he gives his speech starting at 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, when Powell gives his speech, we also have the policy panel discussion that's going to be going on. So we're going to be listening to what Powell says during the discussion, and this is going to be happening at another conference in Washington, D.C. We'll be watching to see what he says about the Fed's monetary policy and the interest rates and what other claims he ends up making. It could cause some high volatility, so you want to be prepared. You want to just be ready for what he's about to say. When it comes to earnings, we had Disney announcing earnings. They beat on EPS. They beat on revenue just barely, and their total Disney Plus subscribers is harder than what the expectation was, which is not bad whatsoever. But their guidance is kind of mixed. We'll be watching to see how they report this as this data is still coming out. But so far, not the worst from Disney. Pretty good earnings. We'll just see what guidance gives us. AMC also announced earnings. They beat expectations, but we're going to be waiting for the call. I think it's still going on right now. So we'll be watching this as well in case retail are interested. And then for tomorrow and beyond, we have some more EVs and just a couple of other earnings. Nothing too crazy though, just like Fiverr and a couple of smaller ones like Unity. So nothing too big. On the overall fear and greed index, the market is getting very close to neutral as we're starting to see buyers stepping in again. However, I personally am going to be very careful when looking at the market at these levels. We're seeing market momentum becoming neutral. The put and call options are also becoming a bit more greedy as we're starting to see more call buying. But be very careful. Once retail turns greedy, that's when things could turn, as this could be a trap. So you want to be very careful. The VIX is kind of neutral right now. It's basically below the 50-day moving average now, and that's going to be somewhat significant. So with that said, let's break down some important levels and talk about what's happening with the markets. Something interesting I noticed, guys, is that the market basically pumped in the morning, it sank down, and then it started to pump near the end of the day again, forming almost like a V-shaped recovery. But now in the after hours, the market is starting to sink. Tesla's down 0.6%. SPY is down like almost 1 point in the after hours. So, it's very interesting. One thing I want to note is that we're at very tough resistance, very close to 438. And we're going to be watching to see how SPY holds at these levels. However, regardless of whether we break it or not, I believe that the market has limited upside, and I think that the market is going to pull back soon. And I'm going to break down exactly why. The first reason would be the fact that we have a double bearish divergence developing on SPY. It's actually a triple bearish divergence on the MACD. On the RSI, it's looking like this might be a triple. It's actually, I think it's a triple on the RSI on the 30 minutes time frame, but on the 4-hour time frame, it's a double bearish divergence. So we're developing some bearish signals telling us that the market's going to correct soon. But remember, when SPY came down to 409 just about a week and a half ago, when we saw the market sink, we had a triple bullish divergence developing, which led to this big bounce. Now we have a double bearish divergence developing, which is going to tell us that the market is going to sink down. It's still developing, so there's no confirmation of the break yet. So what does this tell us? This tells us two possibilities, okay? It's going to depend on what Jerome Powell says tomorrow, but I'm thinking either the top is going to be in the 438s. We're going to be hitting this tight resistance right here, and this could cause the market to sink as we touched 438 and rejected. So the market might come back down and the top could be in. Maybe we try to like retest the 438s and then just reject. Or what could happen is the market pumps a little bit more thanks to Nvidia and Apple, and we go up to 440 to 442 on SPY, just a little bit higher. And then the market rejects in the 440 area, and we see this thing start sinking back down towards 430 over the next 1.5 weeks. So I'm anticipating either it pops a little bit and then drops, or we just pop a little bit more and then the market ends up dropping. We're going to find out if the double bearish divergence leads to a sell-off, or if this turns into a triple bearish divergence if we get one last pop, and then we start to sell off. So it's got to be one of those two. I'm still leaning in that direction. I was long on the market this whole time. I've been, continuing to hold options, continuing to buy calls. I ended up exiting my positions, and I just started shorting SPY this morning at 438. That's when I entered a short position. I could be wrong about the entry. It could be, a little bit early, but whether it's early or not, I think that this is a good place to be making that decision. And I think that if the market goes higher, I'm just going to continue to dollar cost average, or I could just close the position and just re-enter. But I believe that very soon, uh, you know, my view is going to be correct. I think that the market's going to correct soon. It just needs a little bit more time. It could take another 2 weeks or so by the time we get all the way back down to 430, and we could just see a very slow decline very soon. So whether we pop more or not is going to be a little bit tricky to determine, as it depends on Jerome Powell. But I believe the market's in a topping process, and there's going to be some downside nonetheless. All right, so watch this 438 resistance as tight resistance. Watch 440 above that and 442 on SPY as resistance. For support, you want to be watching 435. If we break it below that, we could come down to 433. My guts tells me it's going to top very soon, either at 438 or very close to the low 440s. And then we're going to see the market start sinking back down towards these lower levels. That's what I think is going to happen to SPY. Now, another big one to be watching for is NVIDIA. NVIDIA, in my opinion, is also in a topping process. And I say that because when you look at NVIDIA, this thing is continuing to climb. And this thing managed to go even harder than expected. It actually pushed very nicely. So we're going to be watching some pivotal resistance levels. Number one, we have this 468 area acting as some resistance right over here. You can see we have this imbalance up here. Then we have this resistance very close to this 470, like 471 to 470 area right here. Then above that, if we do break this, we could get very close to 475 to 476. At one of those, I think NVIDIA is going to reject. It's a little hard to tell as it depends on Jerome Powell's speech, but I think that it might either the top is in and this thing is just going to start downtrending as we have like a potential left shoulder and a head that developed, or it pops a little bit more towards 470 to 472, somewhere in the 470s. Then we're just going to reject off that, and we're going to see a big move to the downside. I'm anticipating that for NVIDIA, either a pop and drop or a drop from here. And I see the same thing happening to Aapl. If you look at Aapl, Aapl is basically doing something very similar. Aapl has a potential, bearish structure developing as well. We have a possible head and shoulders right here. We have this, bullish wedge. It's still holding technically. It's not looking that bad. And I would say that even though Apple's not officially, gonna tank yet, we have a possible head and shoulders on the chart, and we're approaching this key resistance right here. So we have this resistance at 184. And then above that, we have 185 right here. I was watching these two levels earlier, so I actually confirmed these resistance levels. Either it pops to 185, then starts rejecting, or it just rejects from here off this head and shoulders. There's going to likely be a move to the downside as we have this imbalance towards 178 and also this 180 area. So either it goes up a little higher and then rejects to 180, or it just rejects from here. If we end up breaking and holding below 182, expected to come down to 180, I believe there's going to be a move to the downside very soon, and I'm leaning a lot more in that direction. Now, another thing I just want to call out about Aapl and also NVIDIA would be the fact that On the 4-hour time frame, Aapl has a bearish divergence that has established. Will this turn to a triple bearish divergence before it drops, or will it stay as a double? Either way, a pop and drop or a drop from here is very probable for Aapl. For NVIDIA, we also have a bearish divergence developing, and we happen to be in a topping process. Now, we could push a little bit more. We could go to 470, maybe a maximum of like 475 if, the bulls are lucky, but I still see this thing rejecting soon. Either way, I think this bearish divergence will remain, and I think that NVIDIA is going to get a rejection either from here or a little bit higher than this. And I think that we're going to see a very temporary pullback, and I think the market's due for that. The daily time frame on NVIDIA is also still holding up decently. Same thing on SPY, it's still holding up. But what's interesting about SPY is we're actually forming a possible topping candle right now, but I don't know for sure. We'll just have to wait and see. It's just a possibility. So once again, it's all telling the same story. We either pop a bit more than drop, or we just drop from here. Same thing on the QQQ. Now, I just want to call out on the QQQ that on the 4-hour time frame, we have a bearish divergence. I think we have, so we have a bearish divergence on the 4-hour, also on the 30 minutes time frame. So the QQQ is going to either pop to 375 then reject, in my opinion, or it just rejects from here off this head and shoulders like structure, and then it just starts sinking towards 368. I'm anticipating some downside very soon. I think we just have to get ready. We just want to be very patient. Finally, the last one I'm going to talk about on TradingView is going to be Tesla. I think that Tesla is also in a topping process. We have this tight resistance up here, and we also have this possible head and shoulders, which is not looking as convincing. I would say that Tesla could pop towards 225 max, maybe 224 to 225 before this thing rejects. Or what else could be happening is we might end up seeing Tesla just sink from here, depending on what Powell says. If Tesla ends up sinking below 216.8, that's when you're going to be a little bit cautious with this, because there's a risk of it retesting 214. Once this breaks, we're going to be seeing Tesla sink back down to 208 to 210, and even like 205 for the gap fill. I anticipate more downside. However, we either pop a bit more on Tesla than drop, or we just drop from here, depending on Jerome Powell's speech. All right, so we're going to be watching that very carefully. Now let's break down some more important levels on the IWM. It's already looking weaker. The Russell 2000 came down to 169 as expected. If we lose the 50 EMA, we're going to be anticipating it to start sinking towards these lower levels. 168 is going to be on the table. So we're going to be watching that very carefully. Now, moving forward, if you look at Microsoft is continuing to pump, looking very, very nice, but there's a slight bearish divergence developing, and I think that Microsoft is due for a pullback very soon, as it's very overbought. The AI frenzy for this company is helping it pump even more after their big investments in OpenAI. So I think that Microsoft may pop a bit more towards 366 than reject, or it could just reject from here, and it's going to start correcting a bit and come back down to 357 very, very soon for a 20 EMA test. Looking at AMD, the same thing is going on. We have a bearish divergence potentially developing. I called AMD potentially having some upside yesterday before it sinks down. And I think that we're approaching this resistance up here, right here. We have this resistance very close to this 116 area, so like right here. And we're going to be watching to see if we could try to break a little bit higher or not. So I'm thinking that if we break 116, it could go up to 118, then reject, or it could just reject from here. The 4-hour is trying to turn, forming a bearish divergence. It looks like it's going to start sinking back down towards these candles right here, towards 110. So I'm leaning more bearish. Either we pop one more time and drop, or we just drop from here. The VIX has a bullish divergence on the RSI on the 4-hour. Also on the 30 minutes time frame, we have another double bullish divergence. This could develop into a triple depending on how low it goes. And the VIX looks like it's going to bounce soon. I think that the market might cause the VIX to push up towards 14.6. We're likely going to see that happen. This is going to be followed by the market potentially cooling off. So that's potentially signaling. Also on the SQQQ, this thing is in a bottoming process as well. We have a nice double bullish divergence that developed. It might start pushing up towards these imbalances. I could see it getting into the higher 18s soon over the next week. So I do anticipate some upside for it as the QQQ corrects a bit. The dollar is very flat, so we'll be watching to see if this breaks up or not. It is making higher highs and higher lows very slowly, but it's very choppy right now. It's not really telling us much. For the QQQ not QQQ, sorry, for Coinbase. I would say that we have a slight bearish divergence. So we're seeing these all over the park. I was calling out how 89 has some tough resistance, and you can see how it rejected off of that. I think that we might see it reject off 89 to the very low 90s and start cooling off back down towards these lower levels. I think it's going to retest 84 soon and start breaking down. So look for a little pop and drop or a drop. For Google, you can see right here, it has a bearish divergence that's establishing. It could pop towards 135 and then reject and start sinking towards 130, or reject from here if it loses 132.5 and come back down to 130. I'm starting to lean in that direction looking at this bearish divergence. It's actually a triple bearish divergence that's developing on Google. So there's going to be some downside likely coming. On Amazon, I was talking about this thing going up for about this gap fill. So if you look at the 4-hour time frame, you will notice that Amazon had this structure. I was thinking it might get close to 145 then reject. I still think that maybe 145 comes in and rejects, or just rejects from here. If this thing starts sinking, it's looking like it's about to sink off this bearish divergence. 140 is on the table. If we get to 140, we're going to likely see Amazon sink the markets. Meta is in a topping process too. I think that the top is either in, or with this bullish wedge, we could see it get very close to about 325 and then reject. So either it retraces towards 312 from here, or it pushes a little bit higher and then retraces 325 and then rejection. Either way, I think that Meta has some downside, and I think that the market's at risk, guys. So just be very careful. The market could pop a little bit more depending on what Jerome Powell says and different factors, but just know we're likely in a topping process and there's going to be a pullback coming very soon. We're due for this as the market just pumped and pumped and pumped almost endlessly over the last, what, like it's been almost 2 weeks, of just nonstop pumping. We're due for the pullback. We have a lot of unfilled gaps on SPY, and they should get filled very, very soon. That's what I'm seeing on the charts, guys. Please remain calm, cool, and collected. Do not let this scare you. This is very healthy. And even if we do pull back, guys, I'm just saying it's a healthy pullback because SPY has a possible inverse head and shoulder structure on the daily chart. You guys can see this right here. So if we do pull back a little bit, we could be forming just a right shoulder before we get a nice bounce, start pushing up higher to end the year. So I'm bullish for December. I just think that over the next 2 weeks or so, the market needs some downside to cool off the indicators in a very healthy manner. But I still think there's going to be more upside for December, and I will break more of that down later on. All right, that's what I see for now. Thank you for listening. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks again, and peace out.